Good morning and welcome to our morning devotion. When we think about the Psalms, often we think about the themes that David wrote about there. And a lot of the themes that David wrote about in the Psalms had to do with nature. He talked about the stars, he talked about the sky, he talked about animals, he talked about light and waves, and he used all of these themes to worship God and to point us towards one of the ways that we can experience God. Jesus himself reassures us in Matthew 6 and 10 that God cares about us so much. He cares about us more than he cares about the birds. Nature reveals God's beauty to us, God's wisdom, God's presence, his creativity, but mostly nature reveals to us who God is and how much he loves us. How do you connect with God in nature? Do you connect with him through a walk in a park, going for a hike, petting your dog, or playing with him in the grass, spending some time with your cat, or just stepping into water? For me, when I feel closest to God is when I'm standing on a lake shore. Now, I didn't realize moving to Ottawa meant there was no lakes nearby. When I mean a lake, I mean a big lake with waves. And that has been one of the hardest things for me to find. I found one on my trip back from Montreal one day. And I stepped out of my car and I stepped onto that lake shore. And I breathed deeply because I felt that presence of God. I felt close to him because one of the most primary ways that I connect to God is through nature. And I feel closest to him on a lake shore. Is there a way in nature where you feel closest to God? Jesus uses nature often in his parables to help us to connect to who God is. I love the stories that he tells. I mean, he uses those things like weeds and plants and all of those different things that are found in nature to help us to understand how much God loves us and how much he wants to be close to us. One of my favorite stories from the past is actually about St. Francis of Assisi and how much he loved animals and how much he loved God's nature. And it was one of the primary ways through which he worshiped God and how he wanted to bring everyone's heart closer to God, to know and to experience him through nature. I'm sure many of you have heard of the song, All Creatures of Our God and King. And when I hear that song, I hear, all creatures of our God and King. When I hear that song, it fills me with that same feeling that I have when I'm in nature. It makes me feel close to God and excited to be in his presence and to see him in the things around me, to experience, the joy that he had in creating ants or bunnies or the power and majesty of a mountain or the waves crashing on the shore. God loves us so much that he left his fingerprint, he left his thumbprint on all of this world to show us who he is and how much he loves us. Many of us feel close to God when we're surrounded by what God has made. This is something that's called a spiritual pathway. And this is just one way. This is one way that people feel close to God. The mountains, forests, lakes, seas, gardens, or a sunset. Experiencing God's beauty and creativity in nature is most moving for many of us. I encourage you to experiment with this. If you're not used to being in nature, try it out. Go for a walk, just in a park in your neighborhood or on one of the many paths here in Ottawa. See if this is a way that you feel closest to God. Have a great day today. God bless you.